A few years ago, my anxiety was high. I was already at a point in my life where I thought I was a little out of it, but that was amplified by a lot when I kept repeatedly hearing noises outside my window. Like every single night, it just wouldn't stop. I would finally get so freaked out I'd go wake my parents up and get them to look outside, but they never found anything. I started to think I was crazy or just subconsciously seeking attention. One morning, my grandfather discovered one of our lawn chairs beneath our bathroom window. It's pretty high up and the bottom pane is fogged, so I'm not sure the chair even helped, but it was left there regardless. The next night, heard sounds again, but nothing. The night after, however, we checked outside and discovered something that made my stomach churn. A small stepladder was sitting directly outside of my window, back just enough to allow someone to sit on it but still see. On my windowsill was a bag of now cold McDonald's, which is just up the street from me. Most of the food was still in there, but still some creep had been watching me doing absolutely nothing of interest in my room without me knowing for I don't know how long. The cops were called, nothing happened. I felt crazier than ever. No one was to be found, but at least we had some evidence that someone that shouldn't be hovering around our house was at my window, watching intently through the blinds, in a space between the two curtains. Heard noises the next night. Ran outside, and nothing again. Earlier in the night I'd sewn my curtains together, which hopefully made it harder to see in. Apparently it did, because now the creep had taken to climbing on top of our air conditioning unit, and from there, climbing onto our garbage, then standing on that, so that he could see above where the drapes went. The handprints and shoe prints were left on the lid to prove it. I should also mention that there were now holes in my screen, and I heard these holes be created. He took a stick and sharpened it somehow. We found it outside my window, and was trying to stealthily break away the screen, bit by bit. The hole is still there. The next night, I distinctly heard the gravel near my window crunch. There was simply no mistaking my sound. As stealthily as I could, I let out a small moan that he surely heard and rolled just out of view, as if I were sleeping, then pressed myself against the wall out of view of the window, very quietly opened my door, and crept down the hall. My heart was pounding. Normally I knock on my parents' door, but I knew the slightest sound would make the creep bolt, so I quietly opened their door and sneaked in, then informed them that there was, without a single doubt, someone outside my window. They didn't mind the intrusion and got up, got dressed, formulated a plan, and crept to the back door. I ran to the bathroom to stand on the edge of our tub and peek out the window just as the back door was thrown open and my parents ran outside. And sure enough, they saw him. They started screaming as the man leapt off of the garbage can and bolted down our driveway, which was what I was looking at. They screamed all sorts of horrible things at the tops of their lungs. "You sick creep, I'm gonna kill you!" from my dad. "You sick freak!" from my mom. He ended up escaping across the street, hiding behind a house adjacent to us. The boldness on this creep. He kept peeking out at us as we all stood outside, but we wanted to leave him there so the cops could finally nab him. They were called, they came, and they searched, but they never found him. The sicko must have hopped a fence or something. Still to this day I hear sounds outside my window, even in the dead of winter, but he's never out there. He might have just been a peeper, but he targeted me specifically, and for months, until he was almost caught. What really irritates me is that once he lost interest in me because it was too unsafe, he moved on to a house down the street with 2 little girls. He actually managed to get in through their window, and their dad caught him just standing in the middle of the room, watching them sleep. I still don't think he was caught, even then. All I know is that it could have been way worse, but it messed me up. I trust the men in my neighborhood even less now. The men around here stare very blatantly. I've been chased home by one. I've had a guy try to get me into his car when I was passing him, telling him no, I didn't need a ride, and to leave me alone. All these years later, I still hear stuff outside my window and freak out. It's messed up. I turn out my lights, entirely, to exercise. I do my best to avoid the windows when I undress. It just scarred me, even though it wasn't a huge deal. This happened when I was young, more than 30 years ago. I was 21, had moved to a new city and got my first apartment. I headed to the local mall one day to buy essentials and things to decorate. It was my first time at this mall. I parked outside a department store and just walked through the mall, seeing what stores they had. I was in a store that sold wall art and was browsing through the prints when I happened to look up. There was an older man, 50s maybe, who was pretending to look through prints as well, but he was actually looking at me, then looked back down when we made eye contact. I got a weird feeling and left the store. I walked down a little and went into CVS. I then noticed that the man had followed me there. Just to be sure, I went over to the feminine products aisle. Sure enough, he followed me into the aisle, pretending to look at the products. It was pretty funny when he realized what he was looking at and got flustered. He stayed close to me throughout the store. When I went to check out, he made a beeline for the register as well, but thankfully someone had stepped in line behind me. It obviously pissed him off. I watched out of the corner of my eye as he looked through the candy bars for something to buy, I guess so he wouldn't look suspicious. Now my radar was really up. I left the store and very quickly ducked into the store next door and hid behind a pillar. I peeked out and saw that he had run out of CVS and was now standing in front of this store, looking in both directions, presumably for me. I went to the back of the store and told the girls that a creepy man was following me. I didn't think I needed security to come, just wanted to hang out for a while, so they let me sit behind the register. I waited about 30 minutes before leaving. So I continue my shopping and don't see him for the remaining hour or so. I go back to the department store, look around a bit, and then leave through the side entrance where I'd parked. I go through the first set of doors, and as is my habit, I check to see if anyone is also coming out so I can hold the door for them. And guess who happens to come behind me? Yeah, no one else but this man. I say, God damn it, I knew I'd forget something and go back into the store. I head to the first employee I see and tell them what's happening, and that I need mall security stat. Security comes, I tell them the story and give a description of the man, then I'm escorted to my car. I'm in the car, doors locked, and unwrap one of the cassette tapes I just bought and pop it in. As I'm driving away, I see the man. I stop the car and watch. He's walking in a more empty part of the lot, with a short, heavy blonde woman with glasses. I exit from a different direction so he won't see me, but it doesn't end there. Flash forward about a year and a half later. I'd quit my job at a doctor's office, took a trip to Italy, started a new job at a department store, then took a trip to France. Note, the mall I was working at was about 25 miles away from the other one. So one night I'm at my counter, and an older woman comes up, looking at the products. The brand I'm representing is French, and she starts talking about Paris. I mention that I had recently been to Paris, as well as Italy, and how much I have fallen in love with Europe and wished that I could move there, but I'd looked into it, and I would need to find a job first. She says, well, this might be your lucky day. The company I work for is hiring. I think you would be a perfect fit, and we have offices in Europe. It would be very easy for you to work in one of our overseas offices. I ask her what type of work it is, and she says it's in hospitality. I ask for the company name, and she says, well, I'm in a bit of a rush, but if you give me your number, I can call you when it's convenient and give you all of the information. And that's when I started shaking. This is how my intuition tells me that something's not right. I look more closely at her, and that's when I realized, this is the same woman who I saw walking with that man in the parking lot. I worked at a convenience store. There is also a halfway house full of medicated, unstable, psycho people around the corner from where I live, so they often come into the store. I was 17 when this all happened. There was this one woman who from afar seemed normal, but up close something was a little off. Her makeup was a bit weird. She would wear bright red lipstick, sometimes yellow or bright pink, and always a bit messy. She always wore the same thing and walked around like she was slightly confused. I remember the first time she entered the store. She bought a 30-cent pack of gum with a $10 bill. As I was giving her change, she stared at me in a very creepy way. She didn't blink. She complimented me saying, "You're so pretty and beautiful, I want to be like you," with an eerie grin. I laughed it off and said thanks, "Here's your change." Then she said, "You know, I have $1 million. I'm also going to marry Ryan Seacrest, and we're going to live in a big house on the moon. I would tell you where I hid my $1 million, but I have the power to not tell you." She also said many more wacky things similar to this. I said okay, and off she went. I figure, oh, it's just one of the schizophrenic people from around the corner. They never cause any harm. She began frequenting the store much more. She would enter with a silent smile, walk round the store without breaking eye contact, and leave in silence. Just went in to stare. I told my friends about her, and they agreed she was really creepy, so I started carrying around pepper spray just in case. Then she began to actively stalk. I would be walking my dog and she'd be staring at me from behind a car. I would be sitting on my balcony and she'd shout, "Hey, you look so pretty today." I would be walking down a store aisle and she would be behind a rack, giggling and whispering to herself. I'd turn around and she'd run away. I had it up to here. There were also a few other places where she allegedly ran into me. Why is she stalking me? I thought to myself. The final straw was when she broke into my house a few days later, and I have webcam footage of this. I was ready to take a shower one night when I heard the front door open from all the way in my room. I heard a faint, "Oh, so this is your house." I freaked the hell out. I turned my laptop webcam on for evidence, in case anything went down, and stood over by my phone. I was panicking. I asked, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I wanted to see if you were in here. Do you have a phone I could borrow?" "Go use the one outside," I said. "I don't have enough money," she replied. "It's only like 35 cents. "I don't have 35 cents. "Yeah, well, you can't be in here, so go." She turns around and I stand there watching her as she leaves. I hear some rustling by my door. I run over and I see her stuffing some of my family's dirty laundry clothes into her shirt. "Leave that alone. That is not yours," I told her. She dumps it out with quickness and runs out the door. I called the police on her, and she never stalked me again.